Good evening. This is Book Club Babble. Tonight we are interviewing the author, Steve Werlin. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Maribel.
And we are going to be talking about his book, To Fool the Rain, Haiti's Poor and Their Pathway to a Better Life. Thank you so much, Steve, for being with us here directly from
Mirebalais in Haiti.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for a wonderful book and for being with us tonight. So one of the things we want to talk about, I think our print interview will be, published in a week or two. But one of the things that I start to talk about is that, in the Western world or in the United States, I start to talk about how we live in a world of excess while others continue to live in extreme poverty. And one of the most beautiful things about your book is that it's beautifully narrated and it tells the stories of brave women who are transforming their lives and those of their children. And they talk about the day-to-day lives and struggles of people of Haiti. So, Steve, if you could tell us a little bit about what extreme poverty is, a bit about your work with the Fonkosi group and what the book is about. Let's start with that, and then we'll get into some questions.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of people know that Haiti is one of the poorest countries in the world, and by far the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. But there are all different kinds of poverty, different levels of poverty. And the organization I work with, Fonkosi, was originally built to help fight them. So it was established in 1994 by a network of community activists, including a Haitian priest named Father Joseph Philippe. And it really took it as its mission to bring Haiti's rural poor into the development of Haiti's economy. And but one of the things it discovered over the years is that there were people, every time it established a new set of programs for the poor, it found a level of poverty beneath the poverty it was addressing. So it kept finding poorer and poorer Haitians. So it came to realize that it needed a special approach for the very poorest. Now, what do we mean by the very poorest? These are the people, simply put, who can't feed their children every day. It's not because there's a famine or a hurricane, though there are plenty of hurricanes in Haiti. It's because they're simply that poor. They can't feed their children every day. They can't send their children to school. They have very little hope for a better tomorrow. And these are the people that Fonkosi's program called Chemin la Vie Meilleure, or the Path to a Better Life, was designed to serve.
And I think what I really appreciated about your book and why it was one of those chosen for the interviews on Book Club Babble is that you did such a great job of bringing those stories to life. And I think that, again, because so many of us take for granted the fact that we're not going hungry and we have a roof over our heads and rain isn't, overpowering us and messing up our few belongings. Can you talk a little bit about what we're talking about, like the kind of shelter, the kind of homes, and how far they are from the local centers or more urban areas, and how it, when you talked about visiting some of these families that you are helping see through a program, and we'll get to the program later, how some of the children, might have one meal a day, if, and what that meal may look like. And it was expanding on that and talking about the realities of that was just amazing. I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that is amazing to me, so I am the only foreigner who works for this program. The whole staff of the program is Haitian. both the people who work above me, the bosses, and the people who are, the entry-level people, they're all Haitians. And one of the things that always surprised me is that they were first sent to learn this program, sent to Bangladesh, which is where the approach was developed.
Right.
And my boss always says, when he went to Bangladesh, he said, this program is very interesting, but there's no poverty like this in Haiti. And that
Really?
he as a Haitian, when he came back and started looking, was shocked to discover the poverty in his own country. And it's an interesting thing that we consistently have Haitians that go out into the field with us, and the reaction is, we didn't know that it was like this. So they don't know that you can go to a woman's house at 2 or 3 in the afternoon and she hasn't given her children anything to eat yet. And that when you ask her what she's going to give them to eat later in the day, she'll tell you she doesn't know yet.
Right.
So it's not a question of 1 meal a day. 1 meal a day is already doing okay.
Right.
Though we think of 3 meals a day being a minimum.
Right.
But we're talking about families that go 2 days, go 3 days without ever lighting a cooking fire.
Right.
And it's very, very hard to imagine. It's very hard to imagine until you're with them. It just doesn't seem like it could be the case in this world that we live in.
Right. And I think that's maybe if you could tell our readers what your first, what it was like visiting the communities where you were seeing this extreme poverty for the first time, and what.
Yeah. So the first time, it's embarrassing a little bit. The first time you go out, you're going to spend a whole day out in the field. So you take snacks and you go out and you think you're going to do some work. You have an assignment and you're going to go out to manage to do your assignment. And you see all these hungry children. So of course, the first thing is you empty out all your snacks.
Right.
That doesn't make any.
Right.
You might be inclined, if you have money in your pocket, to empty out your pockets too.
Right.
But the work isn't about, the work isn't about just charity. That's
right.
not the point of the work. The work is about helping women use their own smarts and energy and capacity to raise their families in a sustainable way. But when you act, the moment you confront the real hunger, you just want to solve it right away, even if it's only for 12 hours. At least they'll have something to eat, have the snack right now. So
right.
At least she'll have a cookie to eat right now.
Right. So actually, that would be a good point of departure, because I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been in very poor, rural communities in Mexico as a student abroad, and where, even though you feel like as a student you have very little money, you're like buying diapers for kids who don't have them, or taking an old woman to the doctor and saying, there goes a quarter of my stipend, but that's a drop in the bucket. So start talking about, a little bit of what your program looks like in the process, because that was just fascinating.
Yeah. So the way I like to do it is people say if you give a person a fish, she'll eat for a day. And if you teach her to fish, she'll eat for a lifetime. But it's just not true, because if you teach her to fish, but she doesn't have nets or fishing line or then the knowledge isn't going to do her any good. Or if she's too sick or her children are too sick for her to actually spend time fishing, then the knowledge itself won't do her any good.
Right.
So the approach our program takes is a comprehensive one. We teach women to establish a small business, whether it's rearing goats or small trading in the marketplace or rearing poultry. And then we actually give them the assets they need to get started. So we give away goats, we give away pigs, we give away merchandise to start a small commerce. But then we also do a lot to help women ensure their health and the health of their families. We provide them water filters. We help them build a latrine. We help them repair their homes so that it can keep their family dry. Work together with an organization called Partners in Health to make sure that they have access to free medical care. But what ties all of this together is that for 18 months, we assign each woman in our program a case manager who visits her once a week to talk about her small businesses, to talk about her family, to talk about her plans for the future, to help her work out the home repair project, build her latrine, all the different things that she has to accomplish. She does it together with someone there holding her hand. We call the program the Pathway to a Better Life because we know we can't give someone a better life, but we can put them on the path and assign someone to walk with them as they head on their way.
And I think it's this, I just find it the commitment, because I think when people say, all right, you're meeting with somebody once a week, so much of the book is about, you or some of the other workers or case managers getting to these places and the difficulty. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, so it's pretty remarkable that it's wonderful that they are having someone to talk to, once a week, when sometimes it's really hard to get out to some of these communities, or for some of them to get to, clinics when they are not healthy. I was really taken aback by some of those cases that you talked about in the book when the children were very sick, and it was just about getting to a doctor, but sometimes just getting there was incredibly difficult.
Yeah, so I went last Wednesday. I visited someone who I talk about in the book quite a bit. Her name is Rose Mott, and it was about a 3-hour hike from where I could get my motorcycle to get to her house. And one has to imagine, so it's probably 3 or 4 hours also along a different path to get to the nearest medical care. And when we first met her, her kids were sick all the time, and so she was hiking back and forth, carrying children because she had no pack animals. And
right.
So how is she supposed to be earning an income?
Right. Wow. Now, when I was reading the book, I was thinking, for many of these folks, because I know that in my own areas of northern Mexico, and my family grew up in very rural ranches where the hike would have taken that long, without a vehicle, and a lot of them had access to the vehicles, right? But eventually, I think, they've, especially now in the last 20 years, most of those folks living in the very rural communities have moved to as poor as the more urban areas, because they're not very urban. Is there a reason why they don't move and come to the centers that are closer to the clinics? Or
Well, you have to have a place you have to have land to live on, right?
That's true. That's true.
Or you have to have money to pay a rent.
Right. That's true.
They don't always.
Yeah. Actually, we have one of our readers asking, how long do you track the women's progress after the 18 months?
We do not have the resources to track all of the women's progress in a systematic way after the 18 months. So what we do is, on occasion, we send out teams to do studies. So we have a study that was done of women who graduated in 2009, and we did a study of them 4 years later. So it's really very spotty. but we have studies from as much as feedback from as much as 4 years afterwards.
Oh, wow. It's interesting. Can you tell us a little bit? I know that how you got started in this because you were interested in learning about the literacy movement, but then, once you get there, you say, well, before we could even talk about literacy, people are living in these extreme poverty, so you can't even worry about that. Let's get to people at a different place now. Can you talk about that part of yeah.
Yeah, I came here as an educator. I was really interested in the way Haitians were addressing community education needs, not so much in schools, but literacy and other adult education.
Right.
I eventually got involved in some schools too. But one of the organizations that I worked with was a microfinance institution, Foncoze.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew from the very start of the institution that the poorer women they were going to serve needed more than loans. They needed education.
Right.
So they developed literacy programs and other education programs to go along with the loans. And I became involved in those, and then became more and more involved in the organization more broadly, including the economic work. And that started to get more interesting to me. Bless you.
Thank you. I know that a lot of the book deals with getting to the point where the women can set up their, business or something so that they could, be able to have, as micro entrepreneurs, something to steadily feed their families. At what point or what percentage of the people you work with eventually are able to send their children to school?
Yeah,
and pay those fees.
That's a really interesting question. So we have almost all of them end up sending almost all their school-age children to school, as long as they are in an area that has a school.
Oh, okay.
So, which is most places. There's been a big increase generally in Haiti in the last few years in the availability of schools. But one of the lasting program that we've seen every time we've studied it is that parents send kids to school.
Okay. How much of I know that when it comes to, and maybe this is a good way because we also have viewers and readers who are interested in how they can help and where is their money, where should they send it, and I know I had somebody that told me before the interview saying, all right, Maribel, is there a specific place where I could send my money so that the people that can't afford their children's school fees, it could go to that pot, to scholarships or whatever it is. How much of that kind of international charity going to just paying children's school fees or helping, either help with micro lending or?
Yeah, there are a lot of organizations in Haiti that are education focused.
Okay.
A lot of them. Our philosophy has been that the most sustainable way to invest in a children's education is help parents become capable of
Right.
taking care of that for themselves.
Right.
But someone who looks into it will have no trouble finding education organization specifically to donate to.
Okay. We have another reader that asks, what is the relationship between the work you do and the government/political changes?
We'd like there to be more of one. So we're in ongoing dialogue with several government offices. That has increased this year as we've been able to start to produce more formal research showing the impact of our program and connecting, have been able to ourselves to people at the in the Haitian government and in the circle of people advising the Haitian government that are thinking kind of broadly about its social protection strategies. We've also had a particularly good partnership with the Haitian Secretary of State for the Integration of Persons with Disabilities, because we worked very closely with him to develop a pilot of our program for persons with disabilities. And so it was a great collaboration.
That's wonderful. And actually, it brings me to another question. When I was talking to someone else about the book, they were really fascinated by the way in which the selection process. And when I was trying to describe how you write it in the book, that it's this kind of collective, you talk to the community and have them rank. Can you tell us a little bit about the selection process and how you guys figured how to do that? Because I found that really interesting.
Yeah, well, we know that we need a community input. We can't just go into a community and figure things out for ourselves.
Right.
But if we only listen to community members, we'll get a lot of bad information. So our process depends on collecting information from the people who live in a community and then verifying it.
Right. What do you mean by bad information? Like,
people who will either not know their neighbor situations are,
right.
or people who will have community leaders that will have people whom they want to direct benefits to.
Right. Like a nepotism thing where it's like, oh, give it to a relative versus the people that are really in need. Is that what you're talking about? Uh-oh, did we freeze? Sorry, viewers, I think we have, are you there, Steve?
Yes, I'm sorry, I thought you just froze.
No problem.
So the way we collect community information from community is at a meeting that has two steps. The first step is tracing a map of the community on the ground and placing all the households on the map. And the second step is actually ranking those households by wealth. And we just do it the simplest way you can imagine. We take two index cards, one a name of a family on each one, and we ask people which of these families is wealthy. And we put them down in two piles or one pile, and then we go through the whole stack of cards until we have about 5 or 6 piles of which each represents a wealth rank.
Mm-hmm. What are the most interesting things you've learned or have you heard of learning in this process of how you get to these findings? And I'm thinking of the women. I think when I saw you speak publicly at the Haverford Friends meeting, that I asked you about, there was a woman who had been called a very, like, kind of, very not a kind name. They thought that she was
a terrible name, Tirzim.
Yeah. Right. And she was really, she had been traumatized. She had lost a child or something.
Oh no, she lost 8 of her 13 children.
Oh my God. Yeah, like just something awful. And she was just,
but she had been especially traumatized by losing an infant just before we met her.
Right. And people thought there was just something. I mean, they had a nickname for her that basically meant she was a nothing, or what was that?
Yeah, her nickname was Tirzim, but that really, she had that, my understanding is she had that from childhood. Tirzim means like a little joke.
Yeah, like a joke. Yeah. And
And
and yeah,
it, and it really minimized her. And
really minimized her. But I love that throughout the program that it empowered her so much that when people, because again, she had been given that name since birth, it had empowered her to a degree when once she was feeding her family, despite the extreme poverty and this kind of very traumatic, a series of traumas that she had been exposed to, could still, interrupt people and say, that is not my name. We're going
yeah,
to
no,
go.
the
Yeah.
day I saw her say, "Don't call me that," was one of the best days of my working life. To see her, it came. I had no idea that she was going to do that.
Yeah.
She had never said anything like that to me before.
Hmm.
Although, I had avoided calling her by that name.
Right.
Everyone around me always did, except our staff.
Right.
And when she said, "Don't call me that" at a public meeting,
Yeah.
uh, after being silent really at all the meetings we invited her to,
Right.
here's a woman who had her pubescent girl with her as her
Speak
spokesperson.
for her. Yeah. And I thought
This
that
little
was,
girl, and so, but
yeah,
who finds the strength one day to say, "Don't call me that. My name is Josemin Laurelien."
a beautiful name, and
Yeah,
it was very powerful, and it really in the narrative, it just really spoke to how empowering the process was and how far she had come along. And I'm so glad you included that. Yeah, I love that. That's like one of the pieces of the stories that resonated with me the most, to have, um, Rosamond, right? How do
yeah,
I say?
Josemin with the J.
Josemin. Josemin. I'm thinking of Josefina. Josemin. Yeah. Um, so let's see. What are the other questions? Now, after the women are able to start their business, how many of them are able to sustain and maintain that business so that they could feed their families?
Yeah, so most of our experience is that at the end of 18 months, 96% are succeeding.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So the real question is how many, there are two levels of questions. One is how many are sustaining that after 3 or 4 or 5 years? And we have some evidence about that, that the large majority of them, maybe not 96%, but something
Right.
like two-thirds at least.
Right.
Um, so, and then the other question is, in a way, people always talk about sustaining an impact, but for us, what would be meaningful is not 5 years down the line, but a generation down the line. Are
Right.
we actually breaking the cycle of poverty? And
Right.
we're just starting to research that. We don't have the answer. We think the fact that so many more kids are going to school is a really positive sign. The fact
Oh,
that there's
wonderful.
the fact that they're not malnourished anymore is a real positive sign. But we want more evidence about what's happening with the kids. And so we're doing the research right now.
Wonderful. We have a reader who says, has doing this work changed your personal view of the decadence of America? Is it possible for you to return to America and not judge people living in extravagance? Great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. I do go back to the States, and that, I the work has changed me, but I don't think the most useful thing would be for me to um, spend a lot of time pointing fingers at people uh, whom I like, who I want to be around. So,
Right.
uh, you know, um, you have thoughts sometimes. Things fly through your head when you hear people complaining about this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah.
But people in the United States, just like people everywhere, have problems that are very real, and
Right.
The
No,
fact that starvation isn't their problem doesn't mean that, you know,
right. But I
they
mean, I
have,
have to be honest. When I heard you speak, I had just finished your book, and I totally became immersed in this world where children were very hungry. And I
yeah.
even and in your adventures, I didn't even know if you had snacks with you on some of these like 3-hour excursions. And I kept on thinking, oh my God, he hasn't eaten, because there were days that you went the whole, you know, whole day without eating, and it's hot, and you're hungry, and so you're thinking about all these things. And I'm not going to lie, then, you know, you're invited to speak in an area where people live very well, and there was quite an abundance of snacks, as you could, you know, recall. um, that I thought, wow, is it weird for Steven to go from one world, and not maybe where you're living right now, where people are partying outside, you know, and maybe you could tell our readers about where you are now, and the festive ambiance outside versus, you know, how far you have to travel to go to visit, you know, these, you know, the 25% of people who live, um, you know, with an average of $1.90 a day, you know, in Haiti. But
Yeah, I will say this. Um, when I see like buffets in the States, I think of some of the young people I could from Haiti I could send into the buffets to just clean them out. Uh,
yes,
and I smile to myself. But you know, uh, none of that really
no, I yeah,
addresses the real issue. So, you know,
right, yeah, no, that must be interesting. Um, but anyway, Steven Werlin, author of, you know, a wonderful book, um, To Fool the Rain. Oh, you know what? Before we close up, let's talk a little bit, because I love the title of your book, and I love, you know, its meaning. So before we close the interview, can you tell us a little bit about where the title of the book comes from?
yeah, I have to say that the title was not my idea.
Oh, really?
Someone else suggested it. Uh, so Haitians have a way of talking about homes, shacks that the extreme poor live in. They say they can fool the sun, but they can't fool the rain. And you know, they mean that they can provide a little, but they don't provide protection against a tropical downpour. And one way to look at what we're trying to do in kind of a broad way is help people learn to fool the rain, defend themselves against a world that has uh, a lot that threatens them in all sorts of ways. You know,
Right,
unless they can establish a firm basis to live.
right. So who came up with the title? Was this a friend, an editor,
Uh, he,
community?
yeah, his name is Matt Balitsaris, and he was a board member for Foncose's Washington D.C. based partner, and he was a real. He knew I was working on the book, and he was a real champion of who helped me make it happen.
Wonderful. Well, you know, whoever made it happen, we are very grateful that it's out there, and we're hoping that, you know, tonight's interview and our the print interview that you did with us, which will be coming out in the next 2 weeks, will make a big impact. And maybe we could close by saying thank you, and then maybe telling our viewers what they can do to help.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of things you can do to help. That one could just give to, you know, one can support Fonkoze itself through our website, fonkoze.org. But what I always like to say is that poverty is bigger than Fonkoze, it's bigger than Haiti. Um, it's an international thing, and there's extreme poverty in the United States too. I know we're not familiar with that, but just learn more about poverty, and as you learn more about poverty, then maybe we'll just be moved to help in one way or another, and you'll find the way to do that.
Right. And this book is a really great way to start for people to learn more about it. And Steve, I also would like to thank you, because after having heard you speak and reading your book, you are very humble, too modest. Thank you for doing everything that you've done, and for continuing to do the work that you do. And good luck. And we'll try to do everything that we can on our end to help the organization and the community.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye, viewers.